Don't expect anyone to show. That was the text from my father. 5 words that cut deeper than any knife. I was standing in a private dining room I'd paid for myself. 10 chairs, 2 candles, 1 heart sinking fast. My name is Chelsea King. I just turned 38 in Jackson, Mississippi. I'd spent weeks planning this birthday dinner. Every detail perfect, every chair waiting. Then I opened social media. There they were. My parents, my brother, my aunt, all smiling in Miami. Cocktails, sunglasses, a caption that said, "Finally together." They hadn't just skipped my birthday. They'd erased me from the family photo. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Then I did what they never expected. I logged into every account tied to their rentals and froze them solid. They thought they could ditch me and keep cashing my checks. They were wrong. Let me know what time it is and where you're watching from, because this story travels far. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying every moment. Every time I'd stepped in for my family. Every time they'd thanked me with silence. They'd always said blood came first. But somehow, I was never part of that equation. I built my real estate business from the ground up, 1 rental at a time. And they were the first to benefit. My parents lived in one of my apartments, rent always late. But I never charged a fee. My brother ran his consulting business out of one of my commercial spaces, a failing one that I subsidized for years. My aunt had her gossip-filled dinners, paid for on the same cards I used, to keep their lights on. They called it family loyalty. I called it survival debt. Every favor I gave came with a bruise, a jab about my boyfriend Owen, a smirk about my luck, as if the work I did didn't count, because it came from me. I remembered my mom's voice last Thanksgiving. "At least your brother's business brings us pride." She said it like a knife wrapped in sugar, and I'd smiled, pretending the cut didn't bleed. For years I believed keeping peace was worth swallowing my pride. But that text, that photo in Miami, burned away every excuse I'd ever made for them. They didn't forget my birthday. They erased me on purpose. I wasn't family anymore. I was their wallet with a heartbeat. They wanted me invisible. They were about to see what that really meant. That night, something inside me hardened. Not hatred, but clarity. I realized love without respect is just emotional debt with no return. And I was finally done paying interest. I wasn't angry anymore. Just empty. And sometimes, emptiness is the first step to peace. The morning after my birthday, I woke up different. The sadness was gone, replaced by something sharper, focus. For years, I'd treated my family like fragile glass, afraid to break the illusion of unity. Now I saw the cracks for what they were, intentional. I brewed coffee, sat at my desk, and opened my property management software. 3 buildings, 3 leases, 3 anchors they'd used to weigh me down. My parents' rent had been half the market value. My brother's commercial space barely covered the taxes. My aunt's senior discount, another joke at my expense. I stared at the numbers, and something inside me clicked. If they wanted to live like strangers, they'd pay like strangers. I drafted new leases. Market rate, 30 days notice. No discussion, no discounts. Just business. When I hit send, I felt a calm I hadn't known in years. It wasn't revenge. It was release. Owen walked in, grease on his hands, curiosity in his eyes. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. For the first time, yeah. He kissed my forehead. Didn't press for details. He never did. That was part of why I loved him. He trusted my storms to pass into plans. I spent the afternoon reviewing accounts, tracing every expense I'd covered for them. Car loans, late utilities, emergency family repairs. Over $70,000 in 5 years. No wonder they could afford Miami. By evening, my inbox was full of new emails, renewal notices, policy confirmations. The kind of paper trail that meant power. I wasn't cutting them off out of spite. I was ending the subsidy that bought their silence. For years, they'd mocked Owen, called him the grease monkey. But the truth was, he was the only one who ever showed up for me. He believed in effort, not entitlement. And maybe that's what my family couldn't stand, seeing me happy without their approval. That night, I opened a bottle of wine and sat with Owen on the porch. We didn't talk about Miami. We talked about the future. He told me, "Sometimes you've got to stop saving people who don't want to be saved." I laughed softly. Guess I finally learned that. The moonlight hit my phone, new messages flooding in, missed calls, guilt trips, excuses. I let them pile up, each one a reminder that my peace was finally under construction. They'd taught me how to give. Now I was learning how to keep. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like their daughter. I felt like my own person, and that feeling was priceless. I looked out at the quiet street, the night air still and forgiving. For the first time, freedom didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. 3 days after I raised the rent, they came to my door. Dad in his pressed shirt, Mom in pearls she couldn't afford. Their faces carried that practiced look, disappointment wrapped as concern. "Chelsea," Dad started. "This isn't you raising rent on your own family?" Mom jumped in, voice trembling just enough to sound motherly. "You're tearing us apart, honey. Over what? A birthday dinner?" A birthday dinner. That's what they called it. I leaned against the counter, arms folded, heartbeat steady. "You made your choice," I said. "Now live with it." Dad's jaw tightened. "We built you up," he said. Like my success was theirs by default. I almost laughed. "You built nothing. I paid the bills. I kept the lights on. You cashed the checks." Mom's eyes glistened. But I'd seen those tears before, every time she wanted something. "Chelsea, please," she said. "Your brother's struggling. He's desperate. Don't make things worse." My phone buzzed on the counter. An email notification flashed across the screen. "Credit inquiry alert." I frowned, opened it. A new loan application under my name. $50,000. Collateral, my apartment buildings. Applicant, Michael King. My brother. The room went silent. Mom's face drained of color. Dad looked anywhere but at me. "You knew," I said quietly. "You both knew." Dad's voice wavered. "He just needs help. He didn't mean any harm." I laughed, cold, sharp. "No harm?" "He tried to steal my life. I dialed my bank right there, reported the fraud, froze my credit, and killed the application in under 5 minutes. Mom reached out. "Chelsea, stop, he's family." I stepped back. "So am I. Or did you forget that in Miami?" Dad's expression hardened. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said. "But at least I'll regret it on my own terms." The call ended. "Fraud case confirmed." Loan denied. I turned to them. "Hands steady now. You taught me loyalty, but never accountability. That ends today." Mom's tears returned. Real this time, maybe. But it didn't matter. She'd wept through every boundary I'd ever tried to set. They left without another word, the door closing behind them, like a period at the end of a long sentence. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. But it wasn't grief. It was peace dressed as emptiness. For years, they'd taken my kindness for weakness. Now I finally understood. Silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. Owen got home an hour later. I told him everything. He didn't interrupt, just listened. Quiet, focused. When I finished, he said, "They pushed too far. Now they know who they're dealing with." I exhaled, feeling the weight lift. They thought I was the family bank. Now they'll learn I'm the vault. They tried to rob me blind, and ended up revealing who I really was. 2 days later, a text from my old friend Nathan changed everything. "Need to talk. It's about your brother." I called him immediately. His voice was tight, uneasy. "He's been pitching your buildings to investors, Chelsea, claiming he has power of attorney." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "He's saying you're unstable," Nathan added, "that he's stepping in to protect the family assets." My pulse spiked. This wasn't desperation anymore. It was a full-blown theft attempt. "Can you stall him?" I asked. Nathan nodded through the phone. "I already did. He doesn't know I called you." When I hung up, the anger wasn't loud. It was surgical. I spent the next hour gathering every document I had. Leases, titles, bank transfers, signed contracts under my name only. Then I called Jennifer, my attorney. Her calm voice grounded me. "Send me everything," she said. "We'll lock down your assets legally." By afternoon, she'd confirmed it. My brother had no authority, no documents, nothing but lies and nerve. But the story wasn't over. Jennifer found something else, a trust fund my grandmother had set up years ago. It had been dormant until now, worth $500,000. Activated only if I stopped financially supporting my family. My breath caught. Grandma had seen this coming. She'd left a safety net. For the moment, I finally cut the cords. Jennifer's words echoed in my ear. "It's yours now, Chelsea. If you stay independent." The trust unlocks immediately. For the first time in weeks, I laughed, not out of spite, but out of clarity. They'd tried to drain me dry. Instead, they'd triggered my freedom. I stood at the window, watching the city lights shimmer. Each one felt like a quiet victory, proof that I'd survived their chaos. The same family who once mocked my choices had unknowingly freed me. And I wasn't wasting a second of it. That evening, I called Nathan again. Tell the investor the truth, I said. Show him the proof. End my brother's story before it spreads. By morning, the deal was dead. My brother's reputation. Toast. Word traveled fast in Jackson. Within 48 hours, he was blacklisted from every serious buyer. Mom texted me a novel. Dad sent a single line. You've gone too far. No, I thought. I'd finally gone far enough. Owen found me on the porch. Coffee in hand. Eyes proud. So, he said. What's next? I smiled. Slow, certain. Rebuilding. But this time, without their fingerprints on it. He nodded, pulling me close. They thought they broke you, he said. They just cleared the path. They tried to steal my life and handed me the keys to start over. A month later, the dust had finally settled. My parents moved out of my apartments. My brother's business, gone. My aunt's gossip, silent. They called it punishment. I called it balance. For the first time in years, my life felt quiet. No phone calls, no guilt, no endless emergencies to fix. Owen and I spent our evenings planning. Blueprints, ideas, something new. What if we started our own company? I asked. He grinned, that calm confidence in his eyes. You've already built empires for others, Chelsea. Now it's time to build one for yourself. So we did. We launched King Properties, a small firm dedicated to affordable housing in Jackson. I invested my grandmother's trust fund into places that deserved better care, families who reminded me of who I used to be. Every brick, every lease, every signed paper felt like redemption. People called me lucky. They didn't know what it cost to stand here. Luck didn't pay those mortgages. Boundaries did. Courage did. My grandmother's trust wasn't just money, it was a message. She'd seen their greed long before I did. And maybe that's what love really is. Not giving endlessly, but knowing when to stop. Owen often says, I look different now. Lighter. Like I finally came home to myself. He's right. I stopped chasing their approval and started building my own peace. Because sometimes, family isn't who you're born with. It's who helps you rebuild. After they've burned it all down, they tried to erase me. Instead, I learned to start again, on my own terms. If you've ever had to rebuild from family betrayal, share your story in the comments. Your voice might be the one that helps someone else stand tall.
I baked my own birthday cake this morning. Nothing fancy, just a yellow box mix with canned chocolate frosting what my mom used to make when I was little. I even added those same cheap rainbow sprinkles. I told myself it was for fun for nostalgia, but truthfully, I just didn't want the day to pass without something sweet. Today, I turned 22, and just like last year and the year before that, no one from my family said a word. I kept checking the family group chat. Nothing, not even a happy birthday from my dad, not even a thumbs-up emoji from my mom. They always forget, or pretend to. But somehow, every year, I still hold out for something. A text, a call, a sign that maybe I'm still in there somewhere tucked inside the part of them that remembers I exist. I moved out 2 years ago after finishing community college and enrolling in nursing school. I thought distance would dull the sting of being the afterthought. It didn't. My name is Mallory Dean. I'm the oldest daughter of John and Karen Dean, born and raised in suburban Ohio. I've always been the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who didn't need much. My younger sister Sienna is the opposite. Blonde, charming, always on stage literally and figuratively. She's majoring in media and communications. My parents adore her, and she knows it. I used to think that if I kept being dependable, if I didn't make waves, they'd notice me one day. That maybe I'd earn their love quietly the way people earn trust. But years go by, and all I've earned is silence. At 10 a.m., I stared at my phone for the 10th time. Still no messages, no missed calls. Still, I sent one. Hey, what time are we meeting for dinner? Group chat Dad, Mom Sienna. I waited. 5 minutes, then 10, then 30. Still nothing. Maybe they were planning something. Maybe they just forgot again. Or maybe deep down I knew this birthday would feel exactly like the last. And I just didn't want to admit it yet. By 3 o'clock my hope had started to crack. Not in a dramatic way. It was more like something slow and familiar, like a wall that had been patched too many times giving in to the weather. I was folding laundry when I checked my phone again. Still no reply. I stared at the screen until the little gray text bubble disappeared, even though I'd imagined it was never there in the first place. I thought about calling my dad, but he never answers unknown numbers, and mine probably didn't even show up on his favorites anymore. So I called my mom. Karen Dean always picks up. She's the kind of woman who keeps her phone fully charged, cleans the house in the morning, and tells the neighbors how proud she is of her daughters. She's never missed a brunch. But birthdays mine in particular, somehow those always seem to slip her mind. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, sweetie, what's up?" Her voice was bright, too bright. That tone she uses when she's walking through Target and doesn't want to seem rushed. I cleared my throat. "Hey, I was just wondering. Are we still doing dinner?" There was a pause. Not long. Just long enough for the air to shift. Then she let out a soft, "Ugh," the kind that says, "I knew I forgot something, but I'm going to pretend I didn't." "Oh, honey, I should have told you earlier," she said. "We're going out tonight with Sienna." I blinked. With Sienna. She got invited to a media internship at the local station. Isn't that exciting? So we're taking her out to celebrate. It was kind of last minute. My mouth went dry. "It's my birthday." She laughed, not mean. Just dismissive. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. We'll do something for you next weekend. This is a big opportunity for her. Try to be happy." "Okay." In the background, I heard Sienna's voice, cheerful, careless. "Is that Mal?" "Tell her we'll bring her leftovers?" More laughter. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't forgetfulness. They remembered. They just chose her. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "Sure." "Have fun," I said, voice even. Then I hung up before she could say anything else. Not because I was angry, but because I refused to let her hear me fall silent. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time after the call. Not crying, not shaking, just still. It wasn't sadness that held me there. It was the weight of being right. Again. Of knowing exactly how this day would go before it began, and still hoping like a fool that this year would be different. My phone was still in my hand. I didn't mean to call anyone. My thumb just moved almost without permission, and Riley's name lit up the screen. Riley was my girlfriend. We'd met 2 years ago in a microbiology class neither of us wanted to take. She sat next to me on the first day, offered me a peppermint, and said I looked like someone who never asked for help even when I needed it. She wasn't wrong. She picked up on the first ring. "Hey, beautiful," she said, then paused. "Wait. What's wrong?" I told her. Not everything, just enough. About the call, the tone, the leftovers. She didn't hesitate. "Come over. Now. My parents are making steak tonight. We'll celebrate you the way you deserve." I didn't argue. Riley lived 20 minutes away in a quiet cul-de-sac with her moms, Ellen and Dana, who had been together longer than I'd been alive. They weren't flashy or loud. They were the kind of people who always had tea in the cabinet blankets on the couch and space at the table for one more. When I pulled into their driveway, Riley was already outside waiting. She opened the passenger door before I could even unbuckle. "I'm so glad you came," she said, pressing a kiss to my cheek. Inside, Ellen greeted me with a hug that didn't ask permission. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," she said, taking my coat. "You're just in time." Dinner wasn't extravagant, but it was intentional. Dana had opened a bottle of wine, and Riley had set the table with cloth napkins. Someone had even printed a name card with my name on it, handwritten, underlined in gold pen. It wasn't about the food. It was that every part of the evening felt like someone had thought about me. Not out of obligation, just because they cared. After dessert cheesecake, my favorite, Riley handed me my phone. "Take a picture," she said. "You deserve to remember tonight." I snapped a photo of the dining room table, the candles, the empty wine glasses, the little card with my name. Then I posted it. "Huge thank you to the people who showed up for me today. I'm so lucky to have found a real family. No hashtags, no explanation. Just the truth." I didn't expect anyone in my family to see the post. It was late, and they weren't exactly glued to my feed. But less than 40 minutes after I hit share, my phone started buzzing like it had caught fire. First came the text from my mother. "Mom, Mallory. "What is this post?" Then from my dad, "Dad, are you serious right now?" Then the calls, 1, 2, 3. I let them ring. I sat on the couch between Riley and Ellen, phone face down on my thigh, pretending not to notice. But inside, something was tightening. Not fear, not guilt. It was something sharper, something I didn't have a name for yet, but it felt a lot like power. On the 4th call, I picked up. "Hi, Mom," I said calmly. Karen Dean's voice hit me like a gust of perfume, pleasant on the surface, suffocating underneath. "What the hell are you doing, Mallory? I'm having dinner," I said, with people who remembered it was my birthday. She gasped like I'd stabbed her. "Don't play games with me. You know what I'm talking about. That post, people are seeing it. Your Aunt Sharon called. Your Uncle Mark. Do you have any idea how this makes us look?" Across the room, Riley stiffened. Ellen gave me a small nod like she could hear everything without needing the words. I held the phone tighter. "I wasn't trying to make anyone look bad," I said. "I just told the truth." "You're blowing this way out of proportion," she snapped. "You know we would have celebrated with you if we didn't already have plans with Sienna. We raised you, Mallory. This is how you repay us." And there it was. Not concern, not apology. Control. My dad's voice suddenly took over the call, his tone low-tight. "You need to take that post down. Now." I leaned forward, elbows on knees. "No. Mallory." His voice sharpened. "If you don't, there will be consequences." I looked up at Riley, then back at the wall. "Like what?" There was silence. Then muffled voices, my mom whispering something sharp in the background, like she thought she couldn't be heard. Then my dad again. "We're coming over." A pause. Just long enough for me to decide not to panic. "Okay," I said, voice level. "See you soon." I ended the call before either of them could say another word. Riley turned toward me, brows raised. "They're coming here." "Yep." Ellen stood up slowly from the armchair. "Then let them come," she said softly. "They should see what it looks like when love doesn't need to be earned." I looked at the door heart steady for the first time all day. For once, I wasn't afraid of what they'd say. I was ready to let them hear me. The knock wasn't polite. It came hard and fast, 3 sharp bangs followed by a pause, then 2 more. I stood from the couch. Riley gave my hand a squeeze, but didn't say anything. Ellen and Dana were in the kitchen now, quietly giving me space, but not leaving me alone. When I opened the door, my mother stepped in like she owned the house. Karen Dean wore her Sunday face hair, smoothed lips, pressed eyes, already scanning the room like she was assessing damage. My father followed close behind, taller, broader, quieter, but no less angry. His jaw was locked, his fists tight at his sides. "Mallory," she said, "we need to talk. Now." She glanced over my shoulder and saw Riley, then Ellen behind her. I saw the flicker in her face, the calculation, the discomfort. "Not here," she added, voice stiff. "Let's step outside." I didn't move. "If you have something to say, you can say it right here." She blinked. "Mallory, please. Don't make this more difficult than it already is." I crossed my arms. "I'm not the one who made it difficult." My dad stepped forward. "Enough with the attitude." "Attitude," I repeated. "You mean standing up for myself?" My mom sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "We are not going to let you embarrass us like this." Dana stepped just slightly into view at the edge of the hallway. She didn't say anything, just watched. "You've got people asking questions?" my mom continued. "They're calling us, your aunts, your cousins. Do you know how humiliating this is?" I nodded slowly. "Then maybe don't give them a reason." "You think this is funny?" my dad asked. "No, but it's honest." He looked ready to explode. My mom stepped in before he could. "We are your parents," she said, voice rising. "We deserve some respect." "Respect," I echoed. "Like the respect you showed me this morning, or last year, or the year I turned 16 and you canceled my birthday dinner because Sienna had a stomachache." Her mouth opened, then closed. "You've made it abundantly clear who comes first, every time, and I'm tired of pretending I don't see it." My mother's eyes narrowed. "So this is what this is about. You're trying to replace us with them." She nodded toward Riley, toward Ellen and Dana just beyond the kitchen light. I didn't flinch. "No." You've been replacing me for years. I just finally stopped pretending I didn't notice. For a moment, the room held its breath. Then my mother's voice dropped soft and sharp. You're going to regret this. I met her eyes. That's what you said the last time you forgot. The silence after my last sentence was thick, almost physical. No one moved. My mother's lips parted, but nothing came out. My father's jaw worked like he was grinding his teeth. Then she recovered smooth-practiced. She took one step forward, folding her arms across her chest in a way that looked maternal, but wasn't. Karen Dean knew how to posture authority without raising her voice. That was always her talent. You don't realize what you're throwing away, she said quietly. I raised an eyebrow. Enlighten me. Her eyes flicked toward the others in the room. This is not the place. Sure it is, I replied. You showed up here, remember? She held my gaze for a beat longer than expected, then smiled a tight, calculated curve. Your father and I had plans for you, she said, and if you keep acting like this, don't expect to be included when it comes to the house, or the accounts, the lake property. There it was. The inheritance. Like it was supposed to break me. John Dean finally spoke again, voice low. You're walking away from everything we've built. I laughed, quiet, almost involuntary. It slipped out of me like air after holding my breath too long. You built something, I said, just not for me. Don't be ridiculous, he snapped. I turned toward him fully. No, I'm being honest. You two built your perfect family around Sienna, and I was just background, reliable when needed, invisible when inconvenient. That's not fair, my mom said sharply. What part isn't I asked? That I was never your priority, or that I finally stopped pretending it didn't hurt? She stepped closer. Mallory, don't do this. You'll regret it. Money isn't everything, but you'll need it one day. I nodded slowly. You're right. Money isn't everything. Then I smiled. But peace is. I stepped back slightly, not out of fear, but to make space for what needed to be said. You think you're holding something over me, but you've got it backwards. I don't want what comes with your strings, your house, your accounts, your legacy. They've never had room for me. Karen looked stunned. My dad looked like he didn't know whether to yell or leave. And then I added softer. The people who celebrated me tonight didn't offer me a dime, just a seat at the table. From the kitchen, Ellen's voice floated in. And that seat is always yours. My mother turned sharply toward the sound eyes narrowing. You think these people can replace your family? I met her eyes one last time. No, they didn't replace you. You gave up your place. I just stopped waiting for you to take it back. My mother stood still for a moment like she couldn't decide whether to lash out or back away. Then her voice shifted. The edge softened. It almost sounded like regret, but I knew better. Karen Dean didn't apologize. She recalibrated. You think we don't love you? She said quieter now. After everything we've done, I didn't answer right away. I let the weight of that question settle between us. Behind me, I felt Riley take a slow breath. Not loud, but I noticed. So did my mother. Her eyes landed on where Riley stood close to me, steady, not backing away. That's when it changed. Karen's expression shifted again, tightened at the edges. So this is what this is about, she said, her voice now bitter. You're letting them turn you against us. She gestured vaguely toward Riley, toward Ellen and Dana still standing quietly at the kitchen entrance like the calm before a storm. You're trying to replace your family with strangers. That word strangers hung in the air. I took a breath. No, I'm not replacing anyone. You just stopped showing up and someone else did. My father, still rigid beside her, muttered something under his breath. Probably the same thing he always thought, but never had the guts to say out loud. My mother stepped forward again. I am your mother, she said, her voice rising but not shaking. You will never get rid of me. We are blood, Mallory. You don't just erase that. I looked at her not angrily, not even sadly. Just clearly. I don't need to get rid of you, I said. You already erased yourself. She flinched. It was quick but real. For once, her face cracked. You pushed me out long before I ever walked away. Year after year, you made it clear where I stood. I begged for crumbs of your attention, and when I stopped begging, you got angry." She didn't speak. Maybe couldn't. "You always had a favorite," I continued. "You made sure I knew it. I was the one who didn't ask for much, so I became the one who got nothing. That wasn't love. That was convenience." My dad finally stepped forward. His voice was flat. "You're being dramatic." I turned toward him. "No, I'm finally being honest." That was the moment it shifted. For the first time, I watched them realize they no longer had control. No threats, no guilt, no family dinners held over my head could reel me back in. I saw it in their faces, not just anger, but something else. Loss, not of a daughter, of power. Dana stepped forward, quiet but firm. "I think it's time for you both to go." Karen looked at her like she'd been slapped, but she didn't argue. John said nothing, just turned and walked toward the door, stiff and small. They left without another word. The door shut behind them with a soft, final click. And I stood there, still breathing, still whole. For a few seconds after the door shut, no one spoke. The quiet wasn't awkward. It was earned. I stood there, still facing the entryway, breathing in the kind of silence that didn't feel empty. It felt like space, like peace. Riley came up beside me first, her hand brushing mine. "You okay?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." Behind us, Ellen and Dana moved back into the room. Dana handed me a glass of water without saying a word. Ellen just gave me a look, the kind that didn't need translation. It said, "You did what needed to be done." And I had. For the first time, I hadn't backed down. I hadn't begged. I hadn't tried to make them comfortable at my expense. I'd told the truth. And I let it be uncomfortable. Riley led me back to the couch. We sat there for a while, shoulder to shoulder. No one filled the silence because no one had to. That was the difference between love and obligation. Love waits with you. Obligation watches the clock. "I kept thinking it would feel worse," I said finally. Dana smiled from across the room. "That's because you're not losing anything. You're just setting it down." I took another sip of water and looked around. The candles on the dining table had burned halfway down. The card with my name was still there, gold ink soft in the glow. It hadn't been a party. It had been better. They hadn't sung. They hadn't brought gifts. But they'd remembered me. And they'd stayed. It was almost midnight when my phone buzzed again. I glanced down without urgency, half expecting one last voicemail from my dad. But it wasn't him. It was Sienna. "Sienna, Mom and Dad are livid. You really messed up this time. There was no happy birthday. No, are you okay? Just that. A warning. Or maybe a flex. Like she was watching it all from the front row, popcorn in hand, still untouched by the mess she helped make." Riley leaned in. "Who is it?" I turned the screen toward her. She read the message, then handed it back with a quiet, "Of course." I stared at it for a while, thumb hovering over the keyboard. For a moment, I imagined writing something back, calling Sienna out for every time she took center stage while I faded into the background. I wanted to ask if she even remembered my birthday had been today, or if she had just enjoyed being the reason no one else did. But the longer I looked, the more I realized something simple. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. She'd known, and she'd let it happen. That was enough. I put the phone down without replying. Instead, I picked up another device. Ellen's old baking book still sat on the sideboard from earlier lemon cookies, bookmarked with a yellow sticky note. I stood and walked into the kitchen. "I think I'm going to start a tradition," I said. "Cookies at midnight, something simple but mine." Ellen turned from the sink. "Want help?" I smiled. "No, but maybe just company." She dried her hands and took a seat at the kitchen table. "I think I've got that covered." As the oven warmed and the dough came together under my hands, I thought of all the birthdays that had passed without cake, without kindness, and how this one, the quietest of them all, had become the loudest in truth. Not because they remembered me, but because I remembered myself. The cookies were cooling on a tray when Riley joined me in the kitchen, her sweatshirt sleeves pulled over her hands. "Midnight cookies, huh?" she said, stealing one while it was still warm. "They're not perfect," I replied, watching the edges crumble in her fingers. "They don't have to be," she said. "Neither do you. We sat in the quiet hum of the kitchen, me Riley Ellen reading at the far end of the table, Dana somewhere in the living room. The kind of silence that never existed in my old house. There, even the quiet carried sharp edges. I thought of all the cards my parents gave me over the years, unsigned, generic, bought last minute at gas stations. I'd kept a few. I didn't know why. Tonight, I took one out, the last one I'd received, a pale pink thing with a gold border and no message inside. I folded it once, then again, dropped it in the trash without a word. Going somewhere, Riley asked, gently watching me grab my coat. Yeah, I said. We're getting drinks. She stood falling into step beside me without question. For your birthday? No, I said, smiling faintly. For my peace. As we stepped outside into the cool night air, I didn't feel the weight I usually carried on days like this. No guilt, no tightness in my chest, just breath, just movement. I wasn't walking away because I wanted to be loved. I was walking away because I was done pretending. If they only remembered you when others were watching, just leave a dot. You don't need to explain. Christmas morning came with the usual rituals. Margaret's cinnamon rolls burning slightly at the edges. Douglas insisting the fireplace be lit, even though the thermostat was set to 72, and Jenna always arriving just late enough to be adored. The tree blinked from the corner of the room, strung with those same gold bulbs from my childhood. I could trace every crack in the ornaments, every chip on the ceramic reindeer flaws we'd never mention, as if tradition itself required silence. My mother, Margaret Hart, wore her velvet red robe like a queen opening court. She was glowing cheeks pink, smile wide. In her hand, a small gold-wrapped box with satin ribbon. She turned to Jenna, my younger sister by 2 years, and their only child in spirit, if not by blood. Open it, Margaret beamed. Jenna Blake, with her flawless blowout and rose-colored sweater, gave one of her signature gasps before she even touched the ribbon. That was her gift to the performance. She'd been doing it since we were kids, like life itself was a Hallmark audition. She peeled the paper back slowly, savoring the moment. Inside, a silver house key nestled in a velvet box. Jenna squealed. I could already feel my father's proud grin forming before I looked. We bought her a house, Margaret said, voice catching, like she'd just announced a miracle. Jenna threw her arms around both of them. I smiled, not from joy, from muscle memory. Then Margaret turned to me, eyes, soft voice low. You'll understand someday, she said. But I already did. My gift was a plain envelope, unmarked, placed quietly into my lap by Douglas, my father. No ceremony, no applause. Just the sound of paper brushing fabric, and a silence thick enough to burn through velvet and ribbon alike. I didn't open the envelope right away. It sat in my lap like something fragile and vaguely humiliating, a reminder, not just of what I lacked, but of how far they'd go to make that lack feel normal. Douglas, my father, had handed it to me with the same energy he used when passing a utility bill. No eye contact, no sentiment, just a quiet, here you go. Meanwhile, Jenna was still squealing, holding her new house key up to the light like it was made of diamonds instead of debt and favoritism. Margaret dabbed her eyes with a napkin and whispered something about granite countertops and walk-in closets. I looked down at the envelope again. Thin, no card. Just my name handwritten in the corner in my mother's looping cursive, a style she'd perfected on PTA flyers and Christmas tags. I ran my finger along the flap, but didn't open it. Because before I even knew what was inside, I already knew what it meant. It meant they saw me the same way they always had. I was 9 the first time I baked my own birthday cupcakes. Chocolate with too much oil and not enough sugar. Margaret helped, but only because Jenna had ballet rehearsal and didn't want the kitchen to smell weird later. That morning, I came downstairs early, smiling, hopeful, thinking maybe there'd be balloons, a card, something. The kitchen was empty. No gifts, no candles. Just the smell of burnt toast and Margaret humming to herself while brushing Jenna's hair in the next room. That same year, Jenna had a backyard party with ponies. Even neighbors we didn't like came by bearing glittery presents and compliments rehearsed for someone else's child. By the time I hit middle school, I'd stopped expecting anything. When I graduated with honors, Margaret didn't come. Jenna had a regional dance competition. I got a text that said, "So proud. Sorry we couldn't be there, go get 'em." When I placed first at the State Science Fair hydroelectric dam model fully functional, Douglas showed up 15 minutes late and left before the awards. He had a golf tee time with someone important. The following week, when Jenna landed a 30-second shampoo commercial, they threw a dinner party. Champagne! Framed the product shot like it was a Pulitzer. There was a moment I go back to more than I should. Senior year. Academic awards night. I had worked hard, brutally hard. Juggled 2 part-time jobs. Maintained a 4.00 GPA. Wrote papers until my fingers cramped and my eyes blurred. They called my name for the top scholarship in front of a packed auditorium. I walked on stage, scanned the crowd, and there she was. Margaret front row, not clapping, just scrolling on her phone. When I stepped down with the certificate still warm in my hands, she looked up and said loud enough for the parents nearby to hear, "Well, at least she's good at something." That one sentence sliced through the applause like a serrated knife. Even now I can still hear it. I used to wonder if I was imagining it all, if I was just the bitter child in the shadow of a shinier sibling. But favoritism doesn't whisper. It carves. It carves itself into holidays and dinners and all the moments where love is supposed to be loudest. That morning, watching Jenna hold a house key while I held a lifeless envelope, I stopped wondering. I knew exactly where I stood. And I knew something else, too. This wasn't the moment to speak, not yet, but it was coming. I opened the envelope with the same care you'd give a wound you already know will scar. There was only one sheet inside, no letter, no message, just a printout of a job listing an admin assistant role at a regional insurance office, entry-level, hourly. Near the bottom in ink that was unmistakably Douglas's sharp block letters, all pressure and control, he'd scrawled, "Thought this might be more your speed." I stared at the page without blinking, my fingers cold. No one noticed. Jenna was still talking about French doors and that cute reading nook. Margaret was already refilling her coffee. I let the paper fall back into the envelope, folded it twice, then slid it under my leg. Not to hide it. Just to end it. The room was full of noise, but none of it reached me. All I could hear was the sound of that envelope scraping against itself, thin paper over thin paper, like something whispering that I would never belong here the way she did. They hadn't given me less because they forgot. They gave me less because they believed I needed less. Because I'd always figured it out. Paid my own rent, packed my own boxes, picked up the phone myself when the school nurse called. And I think that's what stung most, not the insult, but the absolute confidence with which they delivered it. They weren't being cruel. They were being consistent. I hadn't planned on coming back, but guilt has a way of disguising itself as duty, especially when your mother calls twice in 1 week, using words like your father and hurt and can't lift boxes without help. It wasn't the request that got me, it was the tone, that syrupy kind of concern layered over unspoken accusation. As if refusing would mean I was cold or selfish, as if decades of quiet dismissal could be wiped clean by one favor on a Saturday. So I said yes. I drove the 4 hours home, parked in the same driveway Douglas still edged with a ruler and hedge clippers, and stepped into a house that smelled exactly like it always had, lemon polish overcooked roast, and the faint hint of something burning that no one acknowledged. Jenna wasn't there. "She's busy," Margaret said with a sigh that somehow made it sound like her absence was my fault. I smiled, nodded, said the right things. By Saturday evening, we'd completed the checklist, helped Douglas lift storage bins in the garage, listened to Margaret complain about Jenna's boyfriend, endured a dinner where every topic circled back to lake house renovations. By 10 p.m., I couldn't sleep. The guest room, the one I used to call mine, still had my old soccer trophies on the shelf, like proof I'd been there once. But the walls felt tighter now, like they remembered how many words I'd swallowed inside them. I wandered barefoot and quiet. The door to Douglas's office was slightly ajar. That alone was strange. He guarded the room like a church, lights off blinds, down locked drawers, passwords on everything. And yet there it was open. The safe was tucked behind the file cabinet, small and gray, but unmistakably his. And for the first time in my life, the door hung loose. I should have closed it and walked away. I should have assumed it was a mistake. but something held me there, some small tug in my gut that said, "What do they keep locked from you that Jenna already knows?" I knelt, slowly, carefully. Inside were rows of manila folders, all perfectly labeled. Tax returns, property deeds, bank statements, some familiar, some new. I flipped through them in silence. Then I found it. A sealed envelope, plain white. On the front in Douglas's handwriting, "To be opened upon death." My hands went still. Then I opened it. Inside a will. Not the one I remembered from years ago, the one they made a show of presenting at the dinner table when Jenna turned 21, where everything was split evenly. This one was different. My name came first. Next to it, a parcel number. A property I'd never heard them mention. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But then I saw the next page a deed, purchased under my name, years ago. And below that, a signed authorization transferring funds using my name. The signature was mine. But the slant was wrong. The curl in the R didn't match. My breath caught in my throat. Someone had signed for me. And based on the bank activity attached, it hadn't just happened once. My name had been used. My identity moved around like furniture in a room I wasn't allowed to enter. I sat there under the soft buzz of the desk lamp trying to piece it together. It wasn't just that they had kept something from me. It was that they had built a second narrative and written me into it without my consent. I didn't say anything that weekend. At breakfast the next morning, Margaret poured my coffee with her usual performative cheer, asked if I'd found a real job, yet then launched into a story about Jenna's new podcast idea, something about lifestyle branding and authentic influence. Douglas barely looked up from his toast. I smiled, nodded, played the role they'd written for me years ago. By noon, I was packed and back on the road, citing work obligations I didn't bother to fabricate. The moment I got home, I pulled my credit reports, every account under my name, every flag I had ignored. It didn't take long. The house, my house, the one they'd tucked under layers of silence, was real. Purchased 6 years ago, funded through a trust tied to my Social Security number. The address matched the parcel on the deed I'd found in the safe. But that was only the beginning. What followed was an increasingly tangled web of financial activity, quiet transfers between internal family accounts, reallocated funds, and at least one authorization bearing a signature that wasn't mine again. So I called someone I trusted, a lawyer friend from college who specialized in estate structures. I didn't give her the whole story, just the documents laid out in careful order, like I was trying to explain something I hadn't fully let myself feel yet. She called me back 2 days later. Her voice was calm, but her words were sharp. "Claire, if you wanted to pursue fraud, you'd have a case." "But that's not what you want, is it?" She was right. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity, and then control. So we started digging, quietly, carefully. What emerged over the next few weeks was almost absurd in its irony. On paper, I was wealthier than I'd ever imagined. Not extravagantly so, but meaningfully, the house a small investment account I didn't know existed, and ties to a family holding company used to shelter assets during Jenna's business venture. The lake house was the most damning detail. That house, their pride, their retreat, their legacy, had been mortgaged in secret 3 years prior to fund Jenna's failed skincare line. They'd tried to fix it quietly. Douglas likely believed he could repay it before the bank came knocking, but he couldn't. By the time I found the deed, the house was already flagged for auction. And that's where it got interesting. Because I bought it, not directly, not as Claire Hart. I set up a shell LLC, used my lawyer as a proxy, and submitted the purchase anonymously through a holding agent. It was legal, clean, undeniable. The paperwork took weeks. But when it was done, I sat there with a deed in my hands, and for the first time in my life, I owned something they wanted. It wasn't about the house. It was about history, about breaking the cycle, about making it clear that I had seen every inch of their neglect and I'd chosen for once not to absorb it. They still didn't know. Margaret kept texting about Christmas, asking if I'd be home, if I could bring wine, if I'd heard about Jenna's new boyfriend. Douglas emailed me a job listing with the subject line, "Something with stability." And I said nothing. Because silence when it's yours isn't weakness. its power waiting for the right moment. And that moment was coming. Christmas came again, as it always did. Same wreath on the front door, same chipped reindeer mugs in the kitchen, the same fireplace burning just hot enough to make the air feel dry but not warm. It was all so familiar it felt fake. Jenna was already there, dressed in a new cashmere set and hugging herself like the room owed her applause. Douglas stood by the mantel with his usual mug of coffee eyes, scanning the room like he was doing inventory. Margaret floated in and out humming carols off-key and asking no one in particular if the cinnamon rolls were done enough. I placed my gift under the tree without a word. Plain white box, no ribbon, no glitter, no tag, just wait. We went through the morning motions. Jenna opened a designer handbag and gasped on cue. Margaret cried. Douglas chuckled. There was a toast to new chapters and dream homes. I nodded, sipped coffee, waited, and then it was my turn. I handed the box to Douglas gently like it might break. He lifted it with both hands, surprised by how light it was. Smiled like he already knew it was nothing important. Jenna giggled. Probably socks, she said. Douglas opened it slowly, not because he was cautious, but because he was indifferent. He peeled back the lid, saw the envelope sealed in wax. For a moment he hesitated, then broke the seal and unfolded the papers inside. His face didn't change at first. Just a tightening around the eyes. Then the color drained. He read the first page again. Slower. The notarized deed. My name. The property. The lake house. Then the second page, the forged signature. The legal warning from my attorney. His hand trembled just slightly. Margaret leaned over his shoulder. She was still smiling when her eyes caught the bolded words near the top of the document. That smile faded like breath on glass. She turned to me. Claire, what is this? I met her eyes calm. It's exactly what it looks like. She blinked. Douglas didn't speak. Not one word. Margaret looked back down at the paper, then at him. Her mouth opened closed, then opened again. You didn't tell me. It wasn't a question. Her voice cracked. Not loudly, not theatrically. It broke the way bones do clean irreversible. Jenna clutched her purse tighter as if it could shield her. She glanced around, confused. No one explained. No one moved. The silence in the room thickened dense and slow, like syrup spilled across the carpet. Uncleanable. I stood up slowly, smoothing the hem of my sweater, and said it lightly like I was thanking them for eggs and coffee I won't be sharing the lake house. Not this time. There was no reply. Not even a nod. Just the sound of paper shifting in Douglas's hands as he tried and failed to make the words mean something else. Margaret took a step back from him like space might soften the betrayal. Her gaze darted between the papers and his face, and in that moment I realized it wasn't just the truth I had delivered. It was the end of a performance they'd rehearsed for years, and the only person who hadn't missed their cue was me. No one spoke, not for a long time. Douglas sat perfectly still, holding the documents like they might disintegrate if he moved too fast. His fingers had stopped trembling. Now they were just locked in place, white-knuckled, unmoving. Margaret stood beside him, frozen mid-step, her face caught between disbelief and something worse, realization. She wasn't angry yet. Anger takes energy. What I saw in her was the quiet devastation that only comes when a story you've built your entire life around finally breaks in half, and you're holding the pieces with no idea how to put them back. Jenna hadn't said a word. She was clutching her new handbag with both hands like a child gripping a stuffed toy during a thunderstorm. She looked from face to face, blinking as though someone had started speaking in a language she didn't know. She had no frame of reference for what was happening, no script. That more than anything told me how deep the lie had gone. No one had ever told her the truth either. Or maybe no one thought she could handle it. I stood there a moment longer, letting the silence stretch. Letting it do the work I no longer needed to. They weren't going to apologize. They weren't going to explain. They weren't even going to ask how I'd found out. Because some truths don't need to be spoken to be understood. When I reached for my coat, Margaret flinched slightly like I'd raised a hand to her. I hadn't moved quickly, just deliberately. like someone who'd finally decided the scene was over. At the door, I paused. Not for drama, not for effect, just to look at them really look. Douglas still staring at the papers, eyes refusing to blink. Margaret crumbling by inches. Jenna silent for once. And me still standing. Just so we're clear, I said softly, I won't be giving it back. Not the house. Not my name. Not anymore. That was all. Then I opened the door and let the cold December air pour in behind me like water after a dam breaks. It hit my face like truth, sharp, honest, clean. By evening, the snow had started. Soft, steady flakes drifted down in the kind of silence only winter understands, where the air doesn't just fall quiet, it settles. Every sound dulled, every edge softened. I sat in an old armchair near the window of the lake house. My lake house. A blanket around my shoulders, coffee cooling slowly beside me. No music, no voices, just the faint creak of the wood as the wind moved across the siding. The place wasn't glamorous. It needed new floors. The chimney smoked when it shouldn't. The thermostat clicked 3 times before doing anything useful. But it was mine, and no one had handed it to me. They never meant for me to have it. They'd tried to hide it, bury it in paperwork and assumptions, in the comfort of thinking I wouldn't look too closely, that I wouldn't ask questions, that I'd keep playing my role, the quiet one, the capable one, the girl who always cleaned up but never asked why the mess existed in the first place. I didn't feel triumphant. No part of this felt like victory. It felt like release, like finally exhaling after holding my breath for years without even realizing it. I thought for a moment about calling someone, a friend, a voice outside the family, just to say it out loud what I'd done, what I'd uncovered, what I'd taken back. But I didn't. Some stories don't need witnesses. Some peace doesn't need applause. I didn't know if they'd reach out, if Margaret would call voice-heavy with half-truths and carefully timed regret. If Douglas would send one of his articles clipped from the local paper pretending like nothing had happened. If Jenna would send a meme like she always did pretending we were still close. Maybe they would. Maybe not. I no longer cared. I wasn't angry. I wasn't looking for reconciliation. I'd drawn a line not in anger, but in survival, and this time I wasn't stepping back over it. The snow kept falling slow and certain. I watched it coat the railings, then the trees, then the edges of the lake. Funny thing is, now that I finally own the one thing they cherished most, I don't even want it, but I needed them to know I could take it, just like they took pieces of me year by year wrapped in silence and called it love. If you've ever left a room and never looked back, just leave a single dot. I'll know you were here.